Rangers Podcast. With Andrew Chelney. And Nick Zararis.
Rangers fans, welcome to the best Rangers podcast in town. I am Andrew Chelney alongside Nick Zararis, and we are Liberty Blue. We scream about the Rangers so that you can save your voice. That's how deeply we care about you, and we appreciate that you've joined us for the ride. This is episode 34, live on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. We'll put the full video up on our YouTube, Liberty Blue Podcast, and the audio version will be available as an audio podcast as well. Search Liberty Blue on your favorite podcast platform, and it should be there. Give the show that shiny and illustrious 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps the show way more than you think it does. At Liberty Blue Pod on Twitter and Instagram, I'm at Chelney Andrew, CHELNEY Andrew, alongside Nick Zararis, Nick ZARARIS. Those are our personal handles to follow as well. Nick, the Rangers are back tonight. How about that?
Yes, it's been about a week. Very mid performance over the weekend from the NHL. Whatever C-suite executive pitched those games, those mini games, skill games, whatever you want to call them, and then the All-Star game itself needs a fundamental reevaluation. Just to be frank with you, the NHL All-Star game, all All-Star games, frankly, need a reevaluation.
Even the NBA, all the Pro Bowl, the NBA, the NHL ones. I mean, they're all just very boring. They I feel like, I don't know, maybe they were genuinely more interesting in the past. I also do feel like there's some nostalgia there as well, because if you take a look back at those older All-Star games, they were kind of the same thing. Like they were more or less the same thing that we have now. Maybe more players wanted to be involved, and maybe they had more enthusiasm to be there and do wacky things. But overall, the process is the same. But nobody seems to just care about All-Star games in general, regardless of the sport that you're playing. Maybe baseball cares just a little bit more because of the Derby, but every other major sport is just like, all players want to do is be named an All-Star, and then everything after that, they're like, I don't care. I don't care what happens. Just name me an All-Star, and I'm good.
Yeah, no, it's not unique to the NHL problem, the NHL All-Star game, not really just having any juice with it, to be honest. It's a generational thing. The All-Star game used to be about seeing the guys you didn't get to see, seeing the guys in the other conference and other markets that you only saw maybe once or twice a year. Now everybody has access to highlights whenever they want, as often as they want. So we know what's going on with other teams if you're that invested. But as far as the Rangers, we're back. We had news yesterday. It broke yesterday that they've brought people back from the AHL. They're going to be carrying 23 players. We know Halak is in tonight against Calgary. We know that Blais is going to be in the lineup. Kravtsov's going to be out. Gauthier is going to be out. Let's start with the big, what do we think this means? Because that's really what's interesting here. Roster transactions are, especially these types, are very just blah. The 12th forward, the 13th forward, this isn't really going to be the difference between the Rangers being this good and that good. But as far as what we think it means, and we were talking about this before we started recording, understanding just what the Rangers think they need at the deadline. And very simply, carrying 23 players, you're accruing less cap space. It's that simple. They could have choose to left Cooley down there in Hartford, where Sammy Blais had a nice 2-week vacation in scenic Hartford, Connecticut.
Scored a goal. Look at that.
4 goals.
Scored goals. Which, if I speak, I'm in big trouble, Nick. I can't.
Correct.
I prefer not to speak.
Correct. We're going to be reasonable here. The Rangers have more important things to figure out than who the 12th forward is, who the 6th defenseman is. We're at this point in February. We are on February 6th. We are 3.5 weeks away from the NHL trade deadline on March 3rd. The Rangers still don't know what their optimal lineup configuration is, so they don't really know what they need to go out and get at the deadline. Because when they started the season, it was Kakko on the first line, it was Lafreniere on the second line, and then it was Jimmy Vesey on the third line with Filipino, and they were rolling along, didn't get great results. Lost a bunch of games down there, changed the lineup around again and again and again. And we're at this configuration now where it's Panarin playing with Zibanejad, where it's Hedl back with the kid line and Trocheck playing with Kreider. And we still don't know if this is what the top 9 is going to look like. And that's what makes it a challenge to kind of forecast who they're in the market for. Because the Rangers could very easily in a week say, all right, we want to try Kakko again with Zibanejad. Okay, so you don't need a top 6 right wing anymore. But if you want to keep the kid line together, who's going to play first line right wing? Because Kakko is really the only right wing who's got an established, like, we can play this guy anywhere. The other 3, when we're talking about Kravtsov, Blais, VZ, etc., none of those guys jump out to me. Or Gaudreau, who, is a center by trade, but gets jumped out to the right wing for convenience purposes. None of those guys jumps out to you as the second line right wing on a team that's going to contend for a Stanley Cup. This team needs more, but we still don't know what they need because they still don't know what they need.
My biggest concern, or one of the biggest concerns that I have about this team, is that regardless of who they get, there's a very good chance that Gallant puts VC and Gaudreau in the top 6 anyway. That's a gnawing thought in the back of my head. Where let's say they get Timo Meier, for example. Let's say they get Ryan O'Reilly, for example. None of that matters to Gallant because he will still put VC and Gaudreau in the top 6, or at least he'll rotate them in. And then if Gaudreau happens to get an assist or get a goal, then that's where Gaudreau will stay for the rest of time because Gallant trusts his guys in very big air quotes. If you're listening to the show, very massive air quotes on that. Like, that's one of my biggest concerns about this trade deadline is that the Rangers go and acquire some really good talent, for example, and then Gerard Gallant is like, nah, I know better. I know that Barclay Goodrow is a top 6 talent, and I'm gonna stick him there anyway. That's my worry with this team is that no matter who they get, Gallant is still going to be as stubborn as ever and is going to play his guys no matter what. And hopefully I'm wrong about that. It's just a worry that I have knowing how Gallant has coached to this point.
Oh, I completely agree with you. Like I was telling you before we started recording, I spent a good part of my afternoon on Friday texting back and forth with Josh Califin, trying to forecast what the Rangers could do, who they could go out and get. And I told him, my biggest concern is they keep playing Gaudreau in the top 6 and it messes up the lineup. And because playing Gaudreau in the top 6 is not in his toolbox. The further down in your lineup you play him, the more effective he's going to be, the better your lineup is going to be. They need one more guy for this top 6. I think that's a fair assessment, unless you're going to ask one of Kreider or Lafreniere to play on their off wing. If you're going to do that, then okay, you could say we want 2 bottom 6 forwards and an extra defenseman just as insurance because Libor Hayek hasn't played a game since December 12th and probably should be paying rent at this point as opposed to the Rangers paying him. But we still got plenty of time here. The Rangers play 13 games this month. There's a couple back-to-backs sprinkled in here, and we're going to have a real good understanding of what they need and who their real competition is. Because like we were saying before we started recording, we were talking about who the Rangers have been linked to. They've been linked to Meier. They've been linked to Kane. Part of me is very convinced that the Sharks are out there floating, that the Rangers are interested in Timo Meier, so that the Devils will up their offer because the Devils just frankly have better assets than the Rangers do.
Sure.
The Devils have picked higher in the last couple of drafts than the Rangers. The Devils also have NHL talent that they could trade, like a Dawson Mercer, who is very good, or an Alexander Holtz, who is very good in return for a Timo Meier. And the Devils, like we were saying, are well positioned to be good for an extended period of time this season. And barring something weird happening or the Devils catching Carolina, that's more than likely your first round playoff series. And I don't feel great about that right now. It's February 6th. There's a lot of time for that to change, but I would not feel great about the Rangers playing the Devils in a best of 7 series.
Well, they didn't look good in the 3 games they played. They won one of them, and then the other 2 they got destroyed in the first one, and they blew the lead in the last game that they played. I mean, this is not a team that, again, and regular season and playoffs they're different. They're not, you shouldn't look at, oh, well, this team, won every single time in the regular season, so it's going to be the same thing in the playoffs. That's not how this works. But you just watch the way that they play each other over those past few games, and you wonder if these rosters are similar-ish. Maybe, obviously, the Rangers are going to add, the Devils are going to add, so both teams are going to be, in theory, better than they are now. What is going to set the Rangers apart from the Devils such that the Rangers are going to win 4 of 7 games? Because in the 3 games that they played, yeah, they won 1, and they almost won a second, but they blew that one. They got destroyed in the first meeting. That is going to be a hell of a series either way. And are the Rangers right now poised to win the series? I'm not very confident in that. Given, I mean, listen, the Rangers are what 8-2-2 in January, despite not looking so good. Like their power play is brutal, and their 5-on-5 play hasn't been all that great either. And despite that, they've pretty much won out January. So the verdict is kind of out on this team right now, but the Devils are a very scary team, and we talked about this before we went on air. But let's say the Devils call Vancouver again. They're like, hey, remember the Corey Schneider trade? Well, why don't we take a gander at Thatcher Demko? And if they get Thatcher Demko in, I mean, I almost had my water bottle over. That was a scary moment. They're a very scary team, and the goalies in New Jersey have been okay. They've been better. They've been not so great. There's kind of been up and down. But if they get Demko in there, I mean, they're one of the dark horses for sure.
Okay, part of what makes this so interesting from a team building and an armchair general manager perspective is that we don't really know what the general manager is thinking. We don't really know what the coach is thinking, because there are viable candidates for the holes the Rangers have: top six wing, six defensemen in the organization. Zach Jones made the AHL All-Star team. Matthew Robertson has put together a solid second AHL season. They have Vitaly Kravtsov sitting around. They could spend the month of February auditioning these guys for these roles to kind of understand whether or not they need to go out and get a bona fide top six guy. Or if you just give player X a little bit more run, a little bit more time to get comfortable without just suddenly changing their circumstance as soon as they start finding a rhythm, then you could say, okay, let's have the best bottom six in the entire NHL then, because our top six is settled. Let's go out there and get an Ivan Barbashev. Let's go out there and get like an Adam Ernie. Let's go out there and get these marquee bottom six guys, have a dominant bottom six, win with our depth. And then if push comes to shove, we think our superstars, our Adam Fox, our Mika Zibanejad, our Igor Shesterkin are better than your guys' best guys. With the depth, okay, you could talk me into that as the team build. But you asked me before we started recording and if we think Kravtsov has played his last game as a Ranger. And there's a good chance he has, to be frank. He hasn't played the last couple. He didn't play the last game going into the All-Star break. Got in for about 2.5, 3 weeks prior to the last time he was healthy bombed.
Played pretty well.
And they did what he asked.
He has done everything that Gallant and the Rangers have asked him to do. Has he played well defensively? He has. Has he been noticeable offensively? He has. I mean, he didn't score 70 goals in the 8 minutes of ice time he gets a game, but what is he supposed to do? Like everything that the Rangers have asked him to do, he's gone above and beyond to show this organization that, hey, I'm pretty good. And if you play me more than 4.5 seconds a game with teammates that can actually score goals and do things, I can do things for you. And the Rangers were like, nah, bro, we're good. Get up there in the press room with old Lieber Hayek there. Hey, you have a grand old time sitting up there. That's what they're doing. And it doesn't make any sense to me, but here we are.
We said it first week of January. They needed to get him back in the lineup to either see if he was usable or if they could trade him. Realistically, based on the way they used him, it seems very clear as of this moment that the plan was get him in the lineup for a few weeks, show he has a pulse, dangle the prospect of if you put him on your team, maybe a new environment, he can be a little bit more than what he is. And that's realistically where I think he fits in here now. He is the B prospect in a trade package for a top six wing or an extra forward, or maybe you do something weird. You do a player for a player type thing. You look for a defenseman who maybe needs a change of scenery. You look for a bottom 9 forward on another team that may be a little bit closer to unrestricted free agency, a little bit more expensive, but somebody a little bit more established from a team that's kind of looking to make their team a little bit younger. That realistically is what I think Kravtsov is at this point, because it seems like the coach just doesn't have any interest in giving him a chance. And maybe Kravtsov isn't anything, but it feels dumb to not even try, considering the Rangers are relatively comfortable in a playoff spot. I mean, they have 62 points. They're 5 points clear of Pittsburgh, who's the last wild card team, 6 points clear of Buffalo, who's the first team out looking in. That's not a huge cushion by any stretch, but we're talking about playing a forward 13 minutes a game versus 9 minutes a game. I don't think one guy is going to sink your team in a month,
especially
of
when he's
February.
good at hockey. Like that's
Yeah,
that's really the most mind baffling thing about this whole situation is like the old adage. I forget who like posted the regional post on Twitter that was just like, why play players that you know are bad when you can play guys that might be bad instead if they're young and
I
they
think
don't
that was
have a
Micah. I think that was Micah of hockeybiz.com.
one of those smart hockey people posted that years ago. It's still true to this day. Why are you playing older veterans that are not very good at hockey when you have young players that you drafted or have acquired through other means that are still in their RFA type of environment and you have under control but you refuse to play them because the quote unquote veterans that are definitely bad supposedly deserve the ice time over young players that could be good but also could be bad. We don't know because you don't play them. Maybe play them every now and again, but the Rangers kind of don't care about that philosophy, so they play who they want to play, and Sammy Blais is in the lineup again for reasons. So there's that.
Okay, this is something else we can talk about along those same lines. I firmly think they sent Sammy Blais back down to the AHL for conditioning to get him game reps, to get his confidence better than what it was. Because being frank, the dude is going through it. He knows he's not playing well. He knows he needs to be better and that people expected it and the team expected more out of him. But realistically, to me, I think that was the first step in saying, okay, we need to prove this guy has a pulse so we can trade him, similar to the way Kravtsov was given a chance to play, just to show proof of life. It's not quite holding up the newspaper in a picture, but it's the same idea here. Getting Blais some confidence back, throw him back in the lineup. If he's going to play with Cooley and Leschyshyn, they can't possibly be the worst fourth line the Rangers have assembled. It's not going to be good, just being frank with you. It's not going to be a good fourth line, but Cooley brings the tall North American thing that Gallant seems to like. Leschyshyn brings the North American thing that Gallant seems to like. And Sammy Blais brings the North American thing that Gallant seems to like. So, Big man from Canada, checks boxes for Gallant. He inherently trusts those guys more than others. I think Blais getting traded, and at the very least, I definitely think if he survives the trade deadline, he's getting non-tendered. I do not think Sammy Blais is on the team next year because they can't afford. There's no point in paying a guy this much, right. 1.6 million, 1.575 million, I think is his cap hit for somebody who has 0 goals. It's just not tenable. It's not.
Well, you would hope that's just the hope and the dream is the realization that hey, like the Rangers, like we literally cannot afford this man anyway, but because he is scoring 0 goals and he's been a Ranger for 52 games. This will be game 53. We'll see if maybe he breaks the record. I mean, Tanner Glass holds a record, and I believe Satboy Steven put this out earlier today that Tanner Glass holds a record for 56 games without a goal to start their Rangers career. Tanner Glass, the man who sniped Carey Price and scored the first goal of the playoffs that one time. That same Tanner Glass, 56 games without a goal to start his Ranger career. So Sammy Blais about to break the Rangers legend record. So I've talked about Sammy Blais ad nauseum. I know whenever Buchnevich is mentioned or Blais is mentioned, I'm always
being bat signal.
It's a bad signal for me to get going. Yes, I understand that, but at the end of the day, like the Rangers, I have to believe that they are well aware that this man has 0 goals in 52 games, and I would have to believe that because otherwise, like what else are we doing here? If Christopher up there sitting in the GM booth is like, gee, how many goals does Sammy Blais have? I gotta go check Hockey Reference, and then he goes and checks. He's like, oh, he doesn't have a goal. Maybe he's not very good. We'll give him 20 more games. We'll figure it out. Like that's at a certain like that kind of. I say that jokingly, but that kind of seems to be what they're doing with Sammy Blais as well. So maybe it's time for a change. What do I know?
Do you think Drury's a hockey DB or a Hockey Reference guy?
I think he's a Hockey Reference guy because the Hockey Reference gives you more. Hockey DB is very like, here is exactly how many games, goals, assists they had. That's it. Hockey Reference is like, okay, well, here's their ice time. Like, here's all their transactions. I do think for simplicity, he might check HockeyDB for a quick glance. But if you want anything substantial, if you want like more stats than just goals and assists, you go to Hockey Reference. I mean, hey, not sponsored by Hockey Reference, but if you want to partner with us, come and say hello. Our DMs are open. But I mean, I would think he's a Hockey Reference guy. Do you think he's a HockeyDB guy?
I use HockeyDB when I'm evaluating guys who don't have long NHL track records because it still has their developmental leagues, which is what's generally more helpful because I use both. I am an avid user of both, depending on what information I need. So I generally think Hockey Reference is used more frequently, but I think Hockey Reference also does have its limitations, which is part of it. Doesn't have the best transaction information. It doesn't always have trades listed. It doesn't have the developmental leagues listed in a convenient format because generally
Elite Prospects is good at that.
Yes, Elite Prospects is very useful for that. And speaking of prospects, what do you think the Rangers' best prospect for improving the roster internally is this month? Because you got to figure that is part of the calculation here for this upcoming month, not just the trial run of doing this with that, finding the right combinations, etc. I think the most obvious one is they just assume Trocheck is going to start getting the puck to go in the net as opposed to off the post and off of the crossbar. Anything else jump out to you as far as like obvious solutions, just like playing a little bit better?
Well, their power play has been an unmitigated disaster for the whole month of January.
I can't say unmitigated disaster.
I mean,
they're still middle of the pack. They're still 17th or 18th in the league.
Right, but when you consider that a lot of their offense is genuinely run through how well their power play plays, then by comparison, especially how they played earlier on in the season, they need their power play to score goals to win games. Now they did play the month of January without scoring a lot of power play goals and still winning most of their games, which is great, even though they didn't look that great. That I feel like is more of an anomaly as opposed to the mean. The mean will eventually come down to, are the Rangers scoring on the power play? The answer is yes. The chances of them winning games are much higher. If they are not doing anything on the power play, or if the refs aren't giving the Rangers opportunities to score on the power play, the chances of them winning, especially come crunch time, come playoff time, is going to be significantly lower. So right now, my number one concern with them is, how are they going to fix power play? Because if they do some tweaks and they start figuring it out, and then they score, as they did last season and earlier this season, then my hopes for them are going to be much brighter. That if all they need to do is get one power play, two power play opportunities, and they score on one of them, and all of a sudden they're right back in. They have momentum. They do all these things. But if the power play continues to just kind of middle in, 18th, 19th, 21st, like that kind of stat line within the ranks of the NHL, then that's going to be a problem. And a lot of the Rangers really hold their special teams to high regards, that, hey, like, we have all these pieces and we have all this high-end talent on these power play units. Well, then let's see it, because they haven't really been showing up the past few weeks here. So if they get that sorted out, then you'll see an improvement pretty rapidly.
So a couple of points off of what you just said. Number one, I am reminded of the article Arthur Staple in The Athletic wrote 4 games into the season, where he said the Rangers power play was even better than it was last year, and that it was basically unstoppable, and teams would not be able to adapt because the Rangers simply had too much talent at 5-on-5. Famous last words. Never make proclamations 5 games into a season.
Yeah.
Good rule of thumb. Even if the guys on the team are like, we know it's good, we're not going to tell you how to stop it. Mm-hmm. Other teams eventually are going to figure it out. This is professional sports. If you put something on tape, eventually the developmental people, the scouting people will be able to put together counters. Everything in hockey has a counter. It's not as linear as football, where deep passes, cover 2. In the seams, cover 2. It's not as linear as that is in football. But as far as the power play and something off of that, one thing we have said for a month now, this was one of my predictions for the new year, was either change the personnel or change the tactics. It doesn't seem like they're going to change the personnel, because they have acquiesced at every single turn to accommodate Vinny Trocheck's skill set, even though he doesn't necessarily fit with what they want to do, whether it be with Panarin at 5-on-5 or on the power play where he's playing that holding role, looking for the one-timer, but also serving as a bumper from the intermediaries on the half walls, getting it to the other side. I would like to see somebody else in that role, or if they're not going to change Trocheck there, you got to get a left-handed shot where Panarin is. That way they have the one-timer on both sides. Those are the only two things I would suggest here. If they're not going to take Trocheck off, you got to either change who's taking the majority of the shots from Zibanejad to somebody else, at least for a little while, to ease up the defense on them, or you need a lefty shot on the other side opposite Zibanejad because they don't have the one-timer there. And something I want to talk about in this context, and I was thinking about it earlier because I did I did my appearance on Locked On Flames this morning, and we were talking about the last couple of years of the Flames because this is the 500th episode of the show. This year, Jonathan Huberdeau has really kind of struggled to find who he needs to play with in Calgary. They've tried a bunch of different people with him. They started him out with Elias Lindholm, who was the Flames' best forward, left on the roster after the offseason. Didn't really work there. He spent an extended period of time with Nazem Kadri and Milan Lucic, which seems to be what they're rolling with for now. It's the same thing with Trocheck. They have tried a few different things now, whether it be with Panarin, whether it be Kreider. They got to find a way to get the guy they thought they were getting. Because to be frank, I've been relatively underwhelmed. 33 points in 48 games, that's relatively fine. The defense hasn't been there, just to be frank. Some of that is the byproduct of playing with Panarin, because Panarin is just frankly bad defensively now. He picks and chooses when he wants to play defense, and that is a drag on the other people on his line. Trocheck probably is better defensively than he's played this season with the Rangers, but because he spent so much time with Panarin, a lot of his defensive numbers aren't as good. And speaking of defensively, big picture, and you mentioned before that in the month of January, the power play hadn't been good. What has been good at 5-on-5 is the team defense. They have done a significantly better job of limiting the high danger chances against and the total number of chances against. Some of that is a result of just the offense playing a little bit better, having to play less defense. But we have to give credit where it is due. The defense is not an atrocity like it was in the month of December. It is getting incrementally better. Which is what we asked.
That's what we wanted. We got what we wanted. So yeah, I mean, listen, like the defense, Ben Harper aside, has been better. Has been a lot better lately. And we could talk about this all night if we want to. But the Ben Harper spot could go to Zach Jones or Matthew Robertson, or again a young player that could be good or could be bad. I would rather see them play as opposed to somebody in Ben Harper that we know is bad and is one of the worst skaters in the NHL. I mean, a good player can just skate around him when need be. If you have anybody that has decent speed with the puck and Ben Harper's on the ice, they will just skate by. Like I'm not very confident in Ben Harper, at least foot speed wise, keeping up with a speedy winger coming down the wing. But give credit to where credit is due. I mean, Fox and Lindgren obviously have been a fantastic pairing. Trouba and Keandre Miller for all the defensive issues that we've highlighted throughout the course of the show and on Twitter and all that. They have been better as of lately. I mean, we'll see how the All-Star break kind of shifts that, because when you come back from a long break, two things can happen. Either you continue right where you pick off and you continue to get the ball rolling, and now you're firing on all cylinders, or you have or the tire that you have has been deflated and you got to inflate it again. And now everybody's kind of, oh wait, we haven't played hockey in a little bit. How do I do this again? And now you go into Calgary, let's say, for example, you lay an egg, and then you go and the next game and you play a little bit better, but you lose there again too, and like that starts its own snowball process. So there's this fork in the road the Rangers are about to embark on tonight against the Flames. Is okay, who are we now that the bye is over? Because they can either be the exact same team that they were in the week that they had off, and they were just, was great, and they got their, the All-Star. Some players went to the All-Star, and then some players went to the Knicks game. I think Chris Kreider and a couple of other players were at the Knicks game this week. So if that was just a really good opportunity for everybody to just kind of calm down, take a break, if you're in Florida, great, take some pictures or skate some laps, or if you're, if you didn't get the All-Star nod, then, you go to some Knicks games and watch them lose, or mostly. But if they continue to play the way they did, then that's the best case scenario. But one of the concerns is they go out on the ice after not being a team for a week, and they go to Calgary and they look bad, and the defensive structure looks bad, and hopefully that doesn't happen. I would love for that to never happen. I would love for the Rangers to win every game until the end of time, but that's a genuine concern, because that happens to not only the Rangers, that happens to a lot of teams. Some teams have kind of figured out how to navigate that, but a lot of teams in a lot of situations, not just in hockey, but just in general, they get a long break and they come back and they look miserable.
Andrew, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Over under 3 icings in the first 8 minutes of this game.
Over. Oh, hammer the over like you have no other bets to put and you have unlimited money. You hammer that over. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw double that, honestly.
Yeah, 2 teams that haven't played in more than a week. A lot of guys who spent the week getting the Cancun 10, as I like to call it. It just a couple light. It's light beer. It's fun. It's light beer. It's not gonna the calories. Right. It's vacation.
No, they don't.
The calories
when you're on
count.
vacation, they don't count. No, of course.
They don't. The calories don't count on vacation. For the guys who stayed up here in the Arctic squall over the weekend,
that's right.
Froze their balls off with the rest of us. Those guys, you're a trooper if you stayed in New York the last week, as opposed to going to like Cancun or Vegas or somewhere warm when you had a whole week off. But I digress. As far as the game tonight, I do want to touch on this for a minute, because the Flames play a style that the Rangers struggle against. The Flames will dump the puck in and force you to break out as often as they can. They want to put pressure on your defensemen, force them into making mistakes, which we know the Rangers defensemen are liable to do. Last year, when the Rangers played the Flames both times, the Flames dummied them. The Flames absolutely bodied them, because the Rangers spent the entire game in their own end, unable to break out. The Rangers also play Seattle this week, another team that plays that type of style. They play Carolina this week, who also plays that type of style. The Rangers need to, part of finding that identity is going to be figuring out what they are good at. We still don't really know what the Rangers are good at as a team, other than Igor Gobert. Because that's the only thing we know for sure. That, and that Adam Fox can do some stuff.
Yeah, he's good at hockey.
They've got. That's really all they've got as far as a consistent identity and what are we good at. Part of this month coming up, and part of figuring out what you need at the deadline, is figuring out what this team is going to be. Part of that is figuring out who's going to play with who. Because last year, at this point, we had a pretty clear understanding that the Rangers were going to add at least 2 forwards, if not more. They ended up adding 3. They added an extra defenseman as well. The Rangers definitely need to add stuff, but we got to figure out what they need. And part of that is just going to be them playing games. They have had a very disjointed schedule, lots of extended 1 game, 2 days off, 1 game, 2 days off, 1 game off, back to back. Oh, after a couple of days off. The next month is 13 games in 3.5 weeks. There are 13 games between now and the trade deadline. We're going to know exactly what they need based on that, because they're playing good teams too. There's a couple stinkers in there, but they go to Calgary twice. They play Calgary twice. They play them here tonight. They play them in Calgary next week. The Western Canada road trip has never been kind to the Rangers.
No.
I think about the one from last year where they went to Vancouver, blew the late lead in the game, went to overtime and lost the game. They went to Edmonton and Connor McDavid skated through 4 people, scored a goal that is in every single commercial on ESPN and TNT. Matthew Tkachuk scored a goal between his legs last year against the Rangers on that Western Canada road trip as well. Those teams are not great in Vancouver, Edmonton, and Calgary, but historically, the Rangers do not play well on that Western Canada road trip. And we could have a very different conversation by next Monday about, how we feel about this team based on how the next 3-4 days go.
I think it's very funny to think about how the Rangers are 49 games into their season. Now, some teams have played 52, we are more than halfway through the season, and we have no idea what the Rangers are. The Rangers, I don't really know what they are. And despite all of that, they are 27-14-8.
Yeah.
I think that's just hilarious because like we are 50 games into an 82 game season, and this team has not a single clue what their identity is. We don't know what their identity is. No one has any understanding of who's playing with who, what the lines are going to be 5 minutes after the puck drops. No one has any clue about anything. And yet the Rangers keep winning. Like I think inherently that's hilarious because some teams they rely on having a set structure of okay, these are the lines, this is what's going to happen at this time, and that's how they play. And the Rangers are just like no thoughts, just vibes, and that's how they win games. And I think that's hilarious.
That is part of the way they want to play. Most nights they want to look the other team dead in the eye and say, our best guys are better than your best guys. And we're going to show you because we have no structure. Our power play is very mediocre. Our kill is good. The top 10 penalty kill, you give credit where it's due.
Yeah.
Granted, so a lot of that is your goalie. Your best penalty killer is your goalie, as every cliche analyst likes to say. But that is very important. And when you have one of the 5 best goalies in the league any given night, you've got probably the best or second best defenseman in the entire league any given night. That makes up for a lot of problems. Just being frank here, the Rangers have played at least 9 different fourth lines this season, 10 maybe at this point, and they've largely treated that as like a throwaway problem as opposed to like, part of the team instead of like, trying to figure out what they want that to be. It's all right, well, we're going to try Lecision tonight. All right, we'll go back to Gauthier. Well, we haven't played Blais in a while. Let's get Blais in there. And as opposed to like treating this like a job, they're treating it like being a waiter at like IHOP, where it's who do we got in today? Okay, let him do that section. Yeah. That's basically how the Rangers have handled the fourth line is a wait staff with a bunch of part-time people trying to fit people in around college schedules, other jobs, the time they have with their kids, all that stuff. It's frustrating, but at the same time, this is what makes doing this fun is not even the team knows. So we can't be wrong. If the team doesn't know,
that's right.
We can't be wrong either.
That makes our safety net pretty big. If the team itself has not a single clue what they're doing, I think one of the important things that we should talk about as well is that the Rangers are kind of waiting to see what happens until closer to the deadline, and they are accruing every kind of dollar they possibly can, except for today for reasons I don't know, because now they're carrying 23 skaters, and now they really are not accruing any extra cap space at all. But the Islanders, on the other hand, which is one of the topics that we should talk about, is they got Bo Horvat, they traded away Beauvillier and Atu Ratti, and and a first round pick. Atu, yes, I'm sorry. But and a first round pick also, which the Islanders they don't really have a whole lot of anyway. But now, okay, you give up a first round pick, you get Bo Horvat. Listen, he's a solid player. I don't know what this does for them, and like that is one of the most interesting storylines that we're going to see come deadline, because if Bo Horvat comes in, and in the I don't know how many games they have until the deadline, like let's say 11 or 12. If they have 11 games until the deadline and Bo Horvat scores 17 points and the Islanders win 8 of 11, that's going to turn around their entire season. But they pretty much went all in, and I would imagine if the Islanders did that move, they're going to do more moves because because it is too early in deadline season. Well, I guess it is Lou Lamoriello, and he doesn't really do a whole lot in terms of roster changes. So maybe it is just Bo Horvat and that's it. But I would have to imagine that Lou Lamoriello, who made this move early on in the process, that he is going to add more. Now, is that going to be enough for them? Because right now the Islanders are 2 games back of the Penguins, but the Penguins have 3 games in hand, and the Penguins, they look really bad. Like they need goaltending, and we talked about this before the show that maybe Thatcher Demko, maybe some other moves, but but Ron Hextall was very non-committal about using his first round pick in any kind of trade this deadline. So who knows? But what did you think of the Bo Horvat trade? Because for me, it was like I wasn't expecting that. I love that the insiders had no idea, because the insiders just don't get info unless they are fed by the GMs and the teams. Like they have no idea about a lot of these things. unless it's Patrick Kane to the Rangers, because every insider that has access to Patrick Kane's agent and their PR team has been pushing that for 3 months, for not even 3 months, since last summer they've been pushing that. So unless they're getting fed the information, like, they don't really know more than we do. So the Bo Horvat trade was a surprise, but are the Islanders a solid playoff team as a result? I kind of don't know.
Okay, so as somebody who has a lot of Islander fans in their life,
He's a very good player. I'm not hating on the player. Bo Horvat's a great player.
I've spent a lot of the last 48 hours watching people who were going from, let's bring Lou Lamoriello to the home now, it's time to retire, to, okay, let's go out and trade for Patrick Kane or Timo Meier. We have the best goalie in the league at the moment. We have a really good top 3 defenseman. We've got another solid player. I think a lot of the Islander fans and content people calling Bo Horvat a superstar or star are just not right. Like, yes, he's an all-star this year. He has 2 career 60-point seasons at 27. I don't think he's a superstar player. I don't think he's elite. I don't think he's a game-changing player. He's really good. He's a really good player. He's going to make them better. They still have real issues. They don't really have a bottom 6 that contributes a whole lot. Their team defense as a whole is not nearly as good as it was the last couple of years under Barry Trotz, as it was under Barry Trotz, as they are now under Lane Lambert. The team defense is not nearly as good. The reason Sorokin is having one of the best goalie seasons he is having a season on par with what Igor was doing last year, because the Islanders are atrocious defensively. They concede a lot defensively to try and cheat for more offense because they don't score a lot. Horvat does help. I'll be curious to see if they're going to play him at center, Barzal on his wing, and see if from what I saw today at practice, they had Barzal and Horvat playing with Josh Bailey, who, from what I've been told from people, that they're trying to audition Bailey to get him out of here as an expiring contract somewhere else. But this makes the Islanders better, but the argument I've been having all weekend is they're still, maybe the 6th best team in the East with Horvat, and that's if everything goes right. Okay, you get in, you play Boston or Carolina in round 1. Great. You gave away another first-round pick. You traded for another guy who's in his late 20s. You think about how this roster is set up. They've got an okay core. The bones of this group being Horvat, Barzal, Dobson, Pelech, Pulak, Sorokin. That's not bad.
Well, they gave Horvat that 8-year extension, so now he's there for forever, essentially.
Yeah. You've got him. You've got Barzal. Those are your 2 lockstep forwards. They've got 2 more years of Brock Nelson, who's having a very nice late career. I don't want to call it a renaissance because he was never like this good before, but a late career bloomer. He's a late bloomer, Brock Nelson. He's having the best 2 seasons of his career in his early 30s. Okay, you got them. Other than that, Oliver Wahlstrom, you still don't really know what he is. You don't really have – Peugeot is okay. He's not bad. It just feels like this group needs a lot more than just 1 or 2 guys. And that's why going this aggressively this year, when you're at best the 6th or 7th best team in the East, doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Well, let me ask you this then. Bringing it back to the Rangers, because this is after all a Rangers show, should the Rangers be afraid of the Islanders now that they have Bo Horvat? Bo Horvat. Jesus. Now I'm gonna, say it wrong 4 times. You get it right the 5th time. But I mean, because me,
because they're not going to be playing them in the playoffs.
Right.
The only way you're playing the Islanders is if you're going to play them in the conference final, because they're going to be on the other side of the bracket. Because they're going to be in the Atlantic side of the bracket more likely than not, because they're going to be the lowest playoff seed playing the Bruins. Now, if they get the first wild card, which would take a pretty good stretch run here. Let's not forget they're, I think, 5 back, 6 back. They're 2 standing points back, but like you said, Pittsburgh has games in hand still to play. Even with a good winning percentage, even if you're generous, you give them a 600 winning percentage the rest of the way. That puts them at about 95, 96 standing points. That's probably not enough to get in. You're going to need to play closer to 650 winning percentage hockey to make the playoffs if you're the Islanders right now.
Yes and no. The one caveat to that I will say is that Pittsburgh looks
Pittsburgh
awful. Yeah. Pittsburgh looks really bad, and Ron Hextall pretty much just went to the media today and said that he loves his team and they're doing just fine. So if the Penguins don't do a whole lot at the deadline, they continue their free fall, which I mean, they can because their best goalie can't stay healthy, and their other goalie is bad at hockey. If the Penguins continue to lose games, the Islanders could, if they continue if they continue to win, and if Horvat comes in, like we said, if Horvat just comes in and starts scoring points at will and revitalizes their offense, and all of a sudden now they're winning games, then that threat could be greater. Right now, with the Penguins having 3 games in hand, and now they're still ahead of the Islanders and all that, right now, maybe not. But Penguins don't look good. Washington has looked better than they have earlier on in the season. I mean, they went on that run earlier on, but they're 4-6 in their last 10, so they haven't really looked all that good either. So if the Islanders are going to make a push, now is the time to do it. So I understand why Lou did this move, but if the Islanders don't fix the other massive gaping holes in their lineup, then Bo Horvat is that meme at a Jurassic Park where you just put a Band-Aid over a big rock that's just slit in half. That's what Bo Horvat is right now to this roster. Maybe he comes in and he scores 10 goals in 8 games, and the Islanders are all of a sudden winning 7 of 8 and all these things, and maybe that happens. And
they need more than him.
They need more one, to be in a solidified playoff spot, and 2, they need more if the Rangers are going to look at them and say, hey, we don't want to play them.
Realistically, in the East, I don't want to play Boston. I don't want to play the Devils.
No.
Other than that, I wouldn't feel that bad. I mean, you could say Tampa, but at the same time, I'm not as worried about Tampa as I've been in the past. Toronto, we're not playing them in the first round, and they're not getting past the first round, so we don't got to worry about them.
Unless this is the final of the year. It's been 19 years. You don't think the 19th time's the charm, Nick? Is that what you're saying?
Probably not, to be honest with you. You're looking at a coin flip series against the Lightning. It's not ideal.
No.
It's not ideal, but that's the stupidity of this divisional alignment right now.
Yeah.
I think that was one thing I found interesting. I don't know if you saw it, and we'll wrap up on this. Over the weekend, The Athletic did the player survey. They talked to 16 different people at the All-Star game, and one of the questions they asked was, what do you think of the playoff format? And I think it was 14-2 in the players they surveyed would like it to go back to the 1-8 per conference as opposed to this division format. And I think it's more fair, which is ultimately the goal here.
Oh, yeah.
I think it should be the goal of your playoff format should be that it's the most fair. And let's be frank here. I don't need to see Capitals Penguins again. I just don't. I don't need to see the Lightning play the Leafs again. I don't need to see the Leafs play the Bruins again. Revitalize the playoff format. It will make everybody's experience a lot more enjoyable, and it'll make teams more aggressive. Because of the way this is set up right now, the only way for some of these teams in is as a wild card. And what? I'm going to give up my first-round pick this year and next year for Timo Meier to play the Bruins in the first round? That's not exactly the most intelligent decision.
Well, do you think then that because the NBA has a setup in which the top 6 teams make the playoffs, and then teams 7 through 10 play in a play-in tournament, basically. So seed 7 plays seed 10, and if they win once, they're in. But if seed 10 wins twice, then they're in, as opposed to seed 7. So that kind of thought process.
I think that will happen. I do think that will happen because the NHL needs to make more money, and more games is the easiest way to make more money.
Yes, but also one of the things that, because this has been going on for a few years now, one of the things that has been a byproduct of that new system in the NBA is that more teams are trying to win.
Yeah.
More teams are going for it. More teams are trying, as opposed to being 5 points out in January and saying, "No, we're too bad." Now, all of a sudden, in the NBA, it's like, "Oh, we're just 2 wins away from the play-in tournament. We can do this." That has kind of, in a sense, I don't want to say curbed tanking, because tanking is still going on for sure, but there's been fewer teams that are less likely to throw in the towel earlier. And we've seen it in the NBA in during this period of time where a lot of the thought process is just get in, because anything can happen once you're in, and then we can worry about that later. So I do think
that's Lou's plan. Realistically, that's the Islanders' plan.
Yeah.
If we just get
Well,
in, you don't want to see us. That
well,
realistically.
I
is
mean,
what
hey, when
Islanders
the
plan
Kings did it as an 8 seed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In 2014. Like they were an
2011.
2012. No.
Yeah, when
That
they
was
beat the Devils,
that was 2012. Yeah, that was 2012. Yeah. They were an 8 seed. And then they went down 3-0 to the Sharks, and they were like, "Oh, well, the Sharks were like, "Oh, this is over." And then that was the year.
Pretty sure.
If I'm not flipping my 2014 and my 2012. But anyways, like the LA Kings went in as an 8 seed.
It was 2014. You know why? Because I remember a couple months ago, I tweeted like in the middle of the summer, like if only the Sharks beat the Kings in the first round of the 2014 playoffs, the Rangers would have won the Stanley Cup that year. That's why.
Oh, okay, okay.
Right.
So okay. So in 2014, like the Kings were an 8 seed, and they just get in, baby, and then they absolutely dominated everybody and won. So
Yeah.
I guess that's Lou's plan. That's Lou's plan for the Islanders. Just get in, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, I do think that Bettman eventually will bring in that. Like what they will do is they will revert back to a 1-8, but introduce the play-in, so have it be 1 through 6, 7-10. Like that's what they're gonna do to mold in with the NBA, because the system has been working in the NBA. It was, people criticized it as a gimmick before it happened and before the change, and now since the change, people are buying in. People want to continue playing. It has been a success in the NBA, and I'm sure the NHL is not far behind.
Oh yeah, no, I would sign up for a Washington, Pittsburgh, and then Buffalo Islanders. That's what the two sets would be in the East. All right, let's wrap. The Rangers play the Flames in 10 minutes. Let's get everybody out of here promptly so they got time to go to the bathroom, get a drink, get settled in, watch the Rangers play the Flames. Make sure you are subscribed to the show on your favorite podcasting platform or on all the major ones. Make sure if you like to watch on video, go on YouTube. Full videos are up on YouTube. Sometimes quick reactions to when things happen, or if I have miscellaneous ideas that come to me in the middle of the night, that kind of thing. There's a lot of miscellaneous stuff on there. Liberty Blue Pod on YouTube. Liberty Blue Pod on Twitter and Instagram, clips, graphics, informational stuff, trying to educate the masses a little bit. The personals, Andrew's is Chelney Andrew, CHELNEY Andrew, and then mine is Nick Zararis, Nick ZARARIS. Make sure you're followed along for those as well. Hopefully the Rangers can play okay tonight. I don't need to win, but don't make this miserable, please. I know both of these teams haven't played in a week, and everybody's got to get their sea legs back under them. But let's not have a miserable hockey game, please. I'd like to have some fun tonight.
Well, they have 4 games this week. They have Calgary, Vancouver, Seattle, and then Seattle, Carolina's a back-to-back. So there's 8 total points on the board. What is a successful week to you? How many points?
6.
6? Yeah.
Yeah. You got to get
at least 6.
Yeah, 6 will be a good week. 6 will be a good week.
Yeah,
hopefully you can live with 5, but 6 is what you want.
I would say 6 is kind of the cutoff. Anything less than that would just be not ideal. And as like, if you're gonna lose, please don't do it the way you did against Toronto, which you just literally took a point and you threw in the garbage can. If you're gonna lose, like at least don't do it like that. I would much rather, for my sanity more than anything else, lose respectfully than whatever that was, because that was a disaster.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.